Hello, welcome everyone. We're open. We're welcome back, everyone. So there you go. Welcome, my name's Dan Lewin. I'm the CEO of the Computer History Museum. I don't know you. It's been 4 years that I've been here, and 2 of them have been shrouded in COVID. It's nice to be open. We were able to survive and do well during the pandemic thanks to our donors and our board and many, many members. So if you're not one of those, please consider it. You can go to our website and join and give. We appreciate the support. It helps us bring programs like this to a very broad audience at no charge. So thank you so much for that. There is a QR code on the materials if that will help you find your way. CHM's mission is to decode technology, the computing past, the digital present, and the future impact on humanity. And we've continued, obviously, our core collection activity and preservation, but the digital present is informed extremely well by historical context. And the program we have tonight is one of those that, going back to the 90s, how many people remember all the fun things that happened in the 90s? I do. There were companies springing up all over the place, and people were building products, and they were trying to create new categories of things. And the folks at Handspring did some amazing things. How many people can remember the last time they did a handspring? I remember doing one of those. It was a long, long time ago. Both visionary founders and individuals, but pioneering product in so many ways. So I'm really excited about the program. I have some personal relationships with many of the people, and some of them are here tonight, so I really appreciate what they did and the direction they set and the opportunity that they present. We're going to start with a 30-minute video called Springboard, The Secret History of the First Real Smartphone. And after that, we're going to have a wonderful panel discussion that's going to be moderated by Dieter Bohn with the Handspring co-founders Donna Dubinsky, who will come to you via this monitor. Donna is almost over COVID and is adhering to our policy, which is that if you test negative, you aren't physically present in the building. So we appreciate she's doing well and feeling great, but so be our policy. And Ed Colligan, who's over there, and Ed will be on stage. So go, Eddie. I'm going to get out of the way now. I'm going to introduce Nilay Patel, who's going to come up and introduce the movie for you. Nilay is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of The Verge. He was the site's first managing editor who oversaw the launch of Vox.com. He's also the managing editor of Engadget, where he was named by Say Media as one of the 10 voices that matter in technology journalism. He co-hosts the Webby Award-winning Vergecast podcast and has appeared on many wonderful shows from CNN, NPR, Fox News, and MSNBC, and many others. So, Nilay, come on up and tell us about the film. Thanks. Great.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm Nilay. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Verge. I have a long list of distinguished accomplishments that we don't talk about. We founded The Verge a little over 10 years ago. My friend Dieter Bohn was the first person I called to come join our founding team outside of the little group at Engadget. And one of the reasons I wanted Dieter to come to Verge was he was running a site called Smartphone Experts. And he was as nerdy about the history of smartphones as anyone I'd ever met. And that history is really important to us 10 years ago, because our thesis was that smartphones would change the world. Unfortunately, we were correct. And so The Verge has really, over time, become a site about how technology makes us feel. And that, you can interpret that however you want, but it is the most emotional tech website that has ever existed. I'm very proud of it. And one of the feelings that I care about the most is the feeling of making new things. Making new things is really hard. It is joyful. It is terrifying. It is very risky. It often ends in disaster. That disaster can be edifying. That disaster can change your life. But most of all, and this is a word I'm going to steal from Dieter, it's a feeling of fragility. New things are really fragile. You have to care for them. And that care leads to extraordinary outcomes. So Springboard is very much a Dieter Bohn production in that it is about the very nerdy history of a smartphone. but it is also about the feeling of care. It is about the feeling of fragility. And it is about that moment when new things can either change the world or Verizon ruins it, I think is what happens at the end of that. So please enjoy. And then Dieter and Ed and Donna are gonna talk about the film, but I really hope you enjoy it, and I really hope you take that feeling away from the film and the conversation. Thank you so much.
Okay, on to the program. I'm going to deliver on a tradition that we have at CHM by introducing our moderator and our panelists through the lens of 5 numbers. And so first I'm going to introduce Dieter Bohn, and I think we're going to go up there. That would be great. Dieter's 5 numbers. 40 Handspring Palm devices in his personal collection. if you couldn't imagine that after that movie. 6 technology news websites that he's founded. 20 years in the tech media industry. 24,3923 undeleted emails in his personal Gmail account. Bad Dieter. And he's been working at Google for 1 month. We'll congratulate him for that too. So there's Dieter Bohn. Great. If I can move on now to Ed Colligan. I'm going to start with the best of all, and then we'll work downhill from there on Ed, because he and I have been friends for a long time. He's got 4 boys, 4 beautiful boys, so wonderful family and family person. All right. He started 5 companies. At the height, Palm had 90% market share in the PDA market. They were on top. And there's a big number up there that I'm not even going to work on, but he had forecast for 1 billion units back in the day, in and around the beginning of the PDA market. He was off the installed base by 5,648,000,000 devices. So he's good, but he missed the forecast. There was some hyperbole in the numbers I heard in the and recently he's gotten involved in the renewable energy business, and he's going to work towards bringing 20 gigawatts of renewable energy to the market by 2030. So thank you for that, Ed, putting your talent to work on that front. Great. And finally, and by no means least, as you all know, Donna Dubinsky. I get the pleasure of making the point that Donna and I started working at Apple on the same day, actually, a long, long time ago. So we've been friends for a long time, and she is just a force in nature, and we're really sorry she can't be here today. But as I mentioned earlier, she's recovering and doing well, and so no issue there. You'll see her energy on the screen in a minute. Handspring went, oh, there you go. So I'll get out of the way in a minute, but Donna has founded 4 companies. Handspring went public in 2000. That's one of her key numbers. She's got 45 patents to her name, working at Numenta, in particular with Jeff. And an incredible installed base of 1 million units in 18 months. Back when 1 million units was a lot of units, right? Those were the days. And then she's had a few accidents, and she's broken both of her legs. All two. All right, so thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Dieter and let you all begin the program. Thanks so much.
Thanks much. All right, Dieter, there's a huge Handspring team here.
Okay, actually, if you're in Handspring, can you, or Palm, if you're a former employee of either one, can you clap?
I think Dieter is a Handspring brother from another mother. So I brought him a little gift today.
My.
Quickly open that.
This is not what I
This is something
All
that
right.
we put together when we had some of those parties you saw on the screen. And I'm sure you've got one of these from Google, but I thought,
yet.
come on.
Oh, wow.
A Handspring. Open that up. Open it up.
We got Flip.
Handspring towel.
Wonderful.
And visor is a day at the beach. There
Amazing.
you go.
Thank you so much. Wow. Well, I don't know how to follow that. It's a surprise. Okay.
Here.
We'll start with
down
it
here.
right there.
Throw it
Okay. We'll
Throw it away.
Yeah. I'm not going to throw it away. Come on. Speaking of surprises, it's been a minute since you both ran smartphone companies. I'm wondering, start with you, Donna, like, what has surprised you the most about how the smartphone market has turned out?
Well, first of all, can y'all hear me? Is this audio working okay? Yes?
Yep, for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry to not be there. Believe me, I feel great. So I would have loved to have been there, but the rules are the rules, and I didn't want to host a super spreader event, so sorry to not make it. I think a lot of the market worked out the way we would have thought. In a couple of key ways. First of all, we thought these devices would be software intensive, and they are. We thought they would have broad applications, and they do. We thought they would increase in capability all the time, and they have. We got an awful lot of it right. If I had to say one thing that surprised me the most, I'd say it's that it was surprising who the winners end up being. When you think about back when we started this, and Jeff mentioned it in the movie, the leaders in the phone industry were Ericsson, Nokia, Motorola, maybe Sharp. I mean, these guys were enormous leaders in the industry. And it's crazy that none of them have ended up having a major role in this business. So it just shows how these kind of discontinuities create enormous opportunities for new players to come in.
Yeah. Ed, before I let you answer the same question, you need to tell us about your shirt. I see a Handspring logo and the Grateful Dead. What's going on here?
This is Colligan's Hooligans. Okay. This was our softball team. And we knew how to steal a base.
Yeah, this is very clever.
We were kind of deadheads,
okay.
you know.
What surprised you about the way that smartphones look today?
Well, despite my hyperbolic nature,
it was one number. Verizon didn't have that many customers.
I was off by 5 billion units. So, it was bigger than our wildest dreams, and walking around everywhere today, and watching everyone, unfortunately, walk around on the street while they're looking at their phones and running into people. Boy, I made one really bad prediction, which is people said, how are you going to get people to not use these things all the time? And I said, well, there is an off button. You can turn it off. And wow, that was just really underestimating human nature.
Well, it's a sleep button now. It's not an off button. So one of the things
Dieter, Jeff would say there will be more accesses to the internet from the mobile device than from the desktop device.
Yep.
He predicted that, back in the very beginning.
Yeah, one of the things that we cut from the documentary, we couldn't find a way to fit it in, is Jeff had apparently written a memo, maybe when he was still at Palm, saying, look, like this is what smartphones are going to look like. And he predicted that they would be touchscreens, there would be no stylus, and there'd be no keyboard, no physical keyboard. And he said this is definitely going to happen, but then the demands of the market were more immediate, and you had to get something shipped, so you didn't have a chance to swing back around to that memo and start developing that more futuristic touchscreen.
When I first joined Palm in 1992, Jeff would say, the future of personal computing is handheld computing. And I said, you better cool it, killer. No one's going to believe that. I believe it, but it's really, you going out and saying that to everyone, they're going to think you're crazy. And it felt that way at the time, but that's how far in advance he was of the whole picture.
I know there's some cards out in the audience. If you've got questions, write them down, and they're being collected, and later on we'll jump to audience questions. So if you haven't started thinking about what you want to ask, please go ahead and do that. Another thing from the doc that we didn't really include was talking about the competition that you were actually facing. I wanted to keep it focused on Handspring, but there was BlackBerry, there was Microsoft, they were doing Pocket PC or Windows Mobile. There was Symbian, which was very big, and lurching towards trying to become a full smartphone. How much did you think about the competition back then? How concerned were you about it, and how much were you just in your own lane?
I think we definitely had a strong focus on just staying focused on what we were doing and executing at a high level on what we were doing, and hopefully the competition would react to us. I'd say the one that was most in our face and was really kind of out-executed us a little bit from the standpoint of market presence and stuff was BlackBerry, actually.
Okay.
Was the one that we mostly kind of said, these guys are a little out-maneuvering us, because they did a really smart thing. They served the financial services community with their product, and that ended up enabling them to raise a lot of money, and they were kind of a de facto standard on Wall Street, and that wasn't great for us. So that was real, but we tried to really stay focused on what we were doing.
The other thing about BlackBerry to note is that, we had to really decide which apps we wanted to focus on. You couldn't do everything, and we decided to take a crack at the web browser with that Blazor product. We said, let's go for that, and RIM really focused on email. And it looked like email was the better killer app earlier. I mean, it turns out, obviously, that the web access was very important, so we were right about that. But I think in terms of a sequence, email was a first app that hit it much bigger than, the limitations, as we described them in the film, the limitations of that early browser.
Yeah. This is a little, I don't know, abstract, but a big theme here, you just brought it up, is you had the right ideas, but just 5 or 10 or 20 years too early. How did you think about, what you were going to bet on, knowing that what you would produce would be important later, but maybe wasn't, hitting what you knew it could be right away when you were launching the product? Did you?
All right, I think you should take that one in. I mean, I don't think we were 5, 10 years early. I think we were maybe a little early in some of these things, but we were pretty much there. Like the story I tell about the browsing and getting it to work on Google, it was there as we were getting there and ready to do it, It really was, other issues, I think, that got to us as opposed to some of the product timing, which I think we did, pretty well. Not perfect. We were never perfect, but we executed on those things pretty well.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I think the biggest things by far were all the corporate machinations that ended up us losing complete control over our destiny, really. I feel like I had one chance after I became CEO of Palm, again in the combined company, to buy back the Palm OS, and I think we could have done that reasonably cheaply, because as you mentioned, Palm Source was not doing well, and the board basically said we should rent, not buy, and let's keep going, and it's going to be okay. In hindsight, that was a really big mistake, because one of the things that happened that 3Com did is they spun off not only the Palm OS, but most of our patents, which we had developed a very strong patent portfolio that would have put us in a really strong position relative to all the upcoming competition. And we lost control of all of that. And that resulted in having to rebuild everything, what became the WebOS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that sense of precarity late in the game, I feel like there was a sense of precarity for what you were trying to do all the way back to before you even launched the Palm pilot. You were constantly on the edge of either running out of money or needing to be acquired or having to dealing with corporate masters who didn't get it. How did you stay focused on making a good product when there was just so much stuff swirling around you constantly?
Well, Ed and those guys got to make a good product, and I had to deal with the stuff.
Our timing wasn't excellent.
Well, remember we started with, the Zoomer and just being a software company and not being a hardware company. We weren't capitalized to be a hardware company at all. In Palm's very beginning, we were doing applications for Casio's hardware, the Zoomer.
Yeah.
And so, then when that...
The most misnamed product ever.
When that totally flopped, then we had to, we decided we knew what to do and we wanted to build this hardware, but, we didn't have money to build hardware, and we went to the board and, the venture investors, they hadn't invested in a hardware company. That was passé. Nobody wanted to invest in a hardware company. They invested in a software company. So, You know, we just, from the very beginning, it was like our tradition was to be struggling for resources.
Well, and the hype of others early on in the pen computing business really hurt us, because there had been, you know, $1 billion. I know this all sounds like trivial money now, but, you know, at that time, that was a lot of money.
We're talking like early 90s?
Yeah, this is 94 probably, or maybe, yeah, 94, 95.
Yeah, okay.
You know, $1 billion had been invested in failed pen computing products, right? And so the venture community was super burned. And here we come around with this little device that looks really cool, but they're all like, yeah, this has been played. We don't think this is going to happen. And if I'm correct on, I believe the best offer we got was like $9 million valuation or something.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's when we sold to U.S. Robotics, right? I mean, because there was no money to be raised. I mean, it was a very tough environment.
And when we sold to U.S. Robotics for $44 million, I had people calling and congratulating me, saying, how'd you dump this dog of a business on me for $44 million? Of course, when it turned out to be worth billions of dollars, you know, I had all these other people calling me and saying, you idiot, why did you $?
Okay, I need to pivot real quick, because I think that if I didn't want to talk a little bit about WebOS, somebody in this audience would punch me in the face. Yeah, okay. So you're back at Palm. You realize you have to roll your own OS. It's WebOS. And then lots of things happen. There's not a whole lot of time to get into all of it. But what to you was like the biggest obstacle to WebOS being successful? Was it more of these corporate machinations, or was it something else?
No. Well, at that point, you know, I felt like we really did transform the company. I mean, I'm incredibly proud of that period of time. It was really hard and difficult. I mean, don't underestimate that. But, you know, we built a beautiful product called the Palm Pre, and, you know, it had some design issues that could have been better, but with a little time, that would have been worked out. We probably over-spec'd that one. It could have just been a slab product, and it would have been fine. But anyway, and the WebOS, I mean, geez, I feel like the guys just did an incredible job on that, and it was 10 years ahead of its time. And everyone thinks Apple killed us.
Yeah.
You know? And I just completely disagree with that. And I know this will be another quote or something somewhere that, you know, I say the wrong thing. But, you know, to me, the much bigger dagger in the whole story was Google. And I'm sorry that you're going there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not my fault. I'm not responsible.
You're way beyond that.
Yeah, okay.
But, you know, if people don't remember this, but Apple had an exclusive relationship with Singular when the iPhone launched.
Yeah, and I think
and that was
around
like,
the launch, they turned into AT&T.
Yeah, they turned into AT&T. It was like a 3-year deal. Okay, we came out very shortly thereafter. We would have had 2.5 years of Verizon and Sprint buying our product.
Yep.
If it wasn't for Google coming in and licensing it to 30 different manufacturers, one of which was Motorola, and they produced the Droid and a bunch, and Samsung and HTC and a bunch of other guys came in with Google products.
Yep.
And their business model was so undermining of ours that was...
Because
that
they
was
gave
just a killer.
OS
We
away
couldn't
for free.
respond. They're giving away the OS for free. We couldn't even license it. I mean, it was just a very tough spot.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that at the time, Verizon was sort of acting like a kingmaker. So before the pre-launch, there was the BlackBerry Storm. Anybody here fans of the BlackBerry Storm? No one. Neither was Verizon. And so they were looking for their iPhone killer. That was, everyone talked about the iPhone killer back in the day. And so the second generation of the Pre and the Droid, like they were kind of playing you off each other. And they ended up, you know, tapping all their marketing dollars on the Droid at precisely the wrong moment for Palm.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Do you think there's any way you could have, I mean, again, it's the story of carriers making life difficult for you. Is there anything either in the early days or, you know, in the later days where you think there was any way to get out from under that thumb where you could have done something?
Yes, never sell to U.S. Robotics.
Yeah.
Convince someone to give us money.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think the bigger mistake than our selling US Robotics, in my own opinion, was the decision of 3Com to spin off the OS. If, when we went back, we could have an OS and develop it, I think we would have been Android, not Android. That was 2 lost years where we're doing Windows devices and we're creating the WebOS and all that stuff. If we had just been able to start with Palm OS and bring it forward, I think, that was the biggest strategic mistake, was that spin-off. That was a terrible mistake.
Right. Do you think that it was inevitable?
That's why Donna quit.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. That was, I mean, that was, she was very strong about, we felt vertical integration with these consumer devices was absolutely critical.
Yep.
And 3Com thought they were going to be the next Microsoft. And they were going to spin out Palm OS, and it was going to turn into Microsoft OS, and everyone was going to license it. And we just thought, no, that's not how it's going to work.
You know what's the biggest irony of that is that they kept accusing me of being a Palm person because of an Apple person.
Oh.
Because my early career was at Apple, so I was thinking too much like an Apple person, and we were going to create devices that were integrated like Apple, and that was the wrong approach, and Microsoft was the right approach. And of course, ironically, the way it's come out was it wasn't so bad to be an Apple person.
But I mean, I guess defending my new company, like they are licensing Android to a bunch of different people, so there is a model there.
Oh no! Look, their model though is very different than the Microsoft model.
Okay.
Their model is enable as many people as possible to search on the internet.
Right. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Microsoft was licensing their product to people.
Yeah.
If the Microsoft model had won, we would have. I think we could have adjusted to that.
Okay. Right.
We could, because we had the WebOS and we had a very licensable product that was beautifully executed, and we could have done that. But when your company was giving it away for free.
My new company, I didn't realize I was going to be up for so much. Do you think it was inevitable that we would have ended up with like a 2-horse race in the smartphone market? Because there was a time where there was Palm, there was Windows Phone 7, whatever they were branding it at the time. There was the iPhone. There was various flavors of Android. There was MeGo. I don't know if anybody remembers MeGo. There was a bunch of stuff floating around, and it seemed like the smartphone market had a shot at being like multiple players, and they all could manage to get an ecosystem. And then it ended up shaking out that it's Android and iPhone. Do you think that it was always going to go that way, or that there was a moment in time where we could have had a little bit more competition?
I think it was always going to be a few. It could have been more than 2. It still could be. Somebody could come up with a big new idea. But if you think about it, it's not like it's a capital-intensive business where you have to build, enormous factories in order to be able to make one of these things, because a lot of it is assembling components from others. But there is a huge capital expenditure in terms of the carrier relationships, the stores, the footprint of those, the sort of hands-on, high-touch model, and it's hard to be in national coverage of that stuff without having significant resources. So I think it was never going to be able to be a bunch of small organizations, but I don't see any reason why it couldn't be more than 2. But it's going to be a handful. I don't know, Ed, what do you think? That's kind of my take.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate. But I was so mad after Google and Apple crushed us. That I ended up using a Windows mobile phone for quite a while.
Okay. Yeah.
And I liked it. And I liked it. It was one of the better integrations with the internet. They actually did a really good job. I don't know, the whole thing with the Nokia acquisition was I think they just messed that up somehow. And then if I was at HP, I would have invested in Palm OS, and I would have doubled down. I mean, the bummer about them acquiring it is they were just going through this incredible, mess of their own on the corporate level, right in the face of that acquisition. So They had a ton of upheaval with Mark Hurd and then Leo, I can't even say his last name. There you go. They had a ton of upheaval, and so Palm was just kind of a little thing on the side, and they just decided to forget it, But I think it still could have done something.
Well, folks, I've got a stack of audience questions this thick. We'll try and get through as many as we can. But right before I do, I just wanted to hear a little bit about what you're both working on today, because there's a life after Palm and Handspring. And I know you both work at Numenta. Maybe talk a little bit about that. You work with Jeff there. Donna?
Well, so we started Numenta quite some time ago, and has been helping us on that project as well. We just can't separate the three of us. So Jeff's passion from being a very young man was to figure out how the brain works. And so we've been building a company that has basically done that, figured out how the brain works, as big of a thing as that sounds. And then we're now figuring out how to apply it to computing and to creating true machine intelligence. And as always, Jeff is way ahead of everybody else, thinking about just amazing things about intelligent computing and how intelligent computing is going to evolve. It's been tough. It's been a lot tougher than a consumer product. It's hard to explain, and it's hard to figure out the applications and all. But we have made real progress, and it's just super exciting to sit back and imagine. What we accomplish in mobile computing, I think, will be nothing compared to what can be accomplished once we truly get intelligent computing.
Yeah, well, I love Donna and Jeff so much I can't separate from them, and they've made such an amazing impact on my life. It's hard to imagine a better partnership, and the people here from Handspring and Palm, they're the real heroes of the story.
I hear they're good at clapping.
They're an amazing group of people. There's so many people here tonight that don't get enough recognition for what they did.
Yeah.
In particular, I want to call out one guy, Ron Marinetti, who a lot of people don't know. And Ron and I worked together at Palm, but before that at Radius. And Ron, basically was an amazing architect behind the Palm OS, and it was he made a huge difference in our success. I'm working right now on renewable energy because our planet's burning, and I feel like I have to do something. If I can do anything with my talents, I want to put it towards something that can make an impact. So I've joined a company called Low Carbon. It's a European-based company, but I'm going to head up the American operation for that, and we're going to try to build as much renewable energy as we can, as fast as possible, to try to make as big an impact as we can on climate change.
Great. Okay, so, yeah.
We don't take on the easy ones, do we?
Well, let's start with a gimme. What Palm OS or Trio features do you miss the most? Because there's a bunch of stuff that thing did that they're still not, doing. Smartphones don't necessarily do today.
I miss the keyboard.
Really?
Yeah. And I miss dialing a name. I mean, typing a name.
Sure.
Just bup, bup, bup.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess on the same topic of smartphones, there's a question about how can we solve the problem of information overload and distraction. I personally don't like using the word addiction because it's a very particular term that has a particular meaning. I don't think it necessarily applies here. But there is a genuine problem of distraction, and you mentioned walking down the street. Do you think that there is a fix for that? Is it a technological fix? Is it just a cultural norm fix? Donna?
Boy, it's hard. I mean, look, I'm addicted to chocolate. I find that hard to stop, too. It's hard when you've got, things that you get pleasure out of to meter them and put them in their right place. But, it takes, I think, some personal discipline to do that. I remember I was stopped by a policeman once and told me I was checking my email. I was at a stoplight. So I felt it was okay, and I was checking my email, and he said, that's really dangerous. You shouldn't be doing that at a stoplight. And I thought to myself, he's right. And I put my phone back in my purse, and I have never checked my email at a stoplight since then. I just said, he is right. It's not safe to do that. So, there's a point at which you just have to start regulating yourself and understanding where these things fit into your life in a way. I mean, look, they offer a lot of, tremendous value in our life. I mean, so many wonderful things they do. So, you just have to take the good and control the other stuff.
Yeah, it's a little sad every time you almost get run off the road. And every time someone like veers into your lane, when you drive up next to them, they're going like this. And I'm uh-huh.
I think I was the only smartphone company when they were first talking regulation, where I called our local, representatives, and I said, I want to help sponsor regulation to say you can't use your phone in the car. And they said, no phone manufacturer is going to say that. And I said, well, I'm saying that. It's not safe. We need to stop people from doing it by legislation. So, I think you need to take those sort of positions.
So here's another question. The Springboard module was it was a modular design, and there's been various attempts to make modular phones since then. The question brings up Project Ara, which was a Google project that didn't really go anywhere. Motorola has made modular phones. Did you think of modularity with the visor as a thing that was important, that gadgets should be able to plug stuff into each other? Do you think that's something that could come back, or was it just a stepping stone?
I don't know, Ed, I think that's more for you, product-wise.
I think it was a stepping stone for us, absolutely. Jeff had a bunch of wood blocks he carved out from day one when we originally were thinking about what to do with there was a little block with an antenna on it. I mean this was a strong intent, as you pointed out, with the microphone already built in of the device. So we had a pretty strong sense of where we wanted it to go. It was just we had to get there.
One of our first employees was a GSM engineer, right? He was very, very early on. We just said we have to get going on because this was all about, the slot was really about enabling and understanding communication.
And we believe in platforms. That was the Palm OS. That was Springboard, right? So enable the developer community. The more people invest in your technology, the more legs it has, and the more defensibility you build. So that was part of that too.
I guess maybe a related question in terms of building up to something. Someone wants to know, with all of your experience of building stuff and trying to figure out timing, is there any advice you could give to somebody who's got a company and trying to figure out what the right time is to launch something, whether they're it's ready and they should go for it, or if they should hold off, or what?
Wow.
Yeah. Not easy.
Can I pull up my Word?
Yeah. So that actually, we could do that.
My word is focus.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you're not familiar, the Computer History Museum, they have this one-word initiative where we're asked to write down a word of advice for a young person starting out in their career. So this is Ed's word.
I was gonna do it in graffiti, but then I wrote I wrote it out, and the only thing that it just looked like I was too stupid to cross my F, so I decided to just do it. But anyway, no, I mean, to me, this is the key to the whole thing, which is that you have to boil down, most entrepreneurs, unfortunately, think they have to boil the ocean when they're coming up with a new product idea or whatever.
Yep.
And, the Zen of Palm that Rob, invented and referenced in his how do you put a mountain in a teacup? This is all about focus. It's driving down to the essence of your business plan, of your product requirements, everything. So when I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, the first thing I say to them is focus, focus, focus. I mean, when you think you've honed in on your idea, ask yourself again, because and when you come to the point where you believe that, yes, you're at that point where you've really whittled it down to the point where you have a sharp stick, then go and believe and go hard, so that's,
So you brought up the cone from the Zen of Palm, how do you fit a mountain in a teacup? Pop quiz, do you know the answer to this?
Yeah, you whittle down the mountain until you have a diamond, and you put the diamond.
Because that's all you need. Yeah. Great. Donna, can you share your one word?
All right, so I did mine in graffiti.
Yeah. And for those who can't see, it's courage.
Nice.
So I said courage because, I mean, oh my gosh, we had one hard decision after another. It was like Ed on the film, he talks about deciding to go all in on the communications devices. It took real courage, and you kept wanting to, you know, have it all ways, and maybe that's a little bit the focus point, but it was also, you know, courage to make a choice and stick with it and make it work. So I wish everybody out there courage in whatever you do.
Well, they asked me to do a word too, so my handwriting is terrible, but I chose persistence because the first time you do something, you suck at it. The second time you do something, you're terrible at it. The third time you do something, you're really bad at it. But eventually, you start to feel like you know what you're doing just a little bit, and so it's worth keeping at it. So,
Yeah.
and with that,
Tenacity.
Donna, Ed, thank you so much for coming.
Thank
This
you,
was fun.
Dieter. Thank you. What an incredible production. I mean,
Thank
too.
you.
Just fantastic job.
Yeah.
What an incredible production on the film.
Thanks to the Verge team for putting it together.
Well, thank you all for coming. I think there are a couple things that I'll say just to wrap things up. 20 years ago, plus a year or two, I remember being in a number of public forums talking about what was going on in the technology industry, and I asked a question of the audience invariably about where they thought the edge of the network was. And 20 years ago, people would mostly say their desktop. And yet, more than 20 years ago, these things were going on. They were nascent, but to the missed forecast, there are 6 or 7 billion people, you know, connected, and they are at the edge of the network. And Donna, I think, said something really prescient, which is that long ago she made a choice about not reading email while driving in a car. And as I think about the museum and a program like this and enjoying the opportunity to let history inform us about what's going on today, the idea that life as we know it doesn't exist without computing, anyone will talk to or reach, it really is about the human condition. And you know, these devices and the ideas that were generated so long ago are making a difference in everyone's lives, whether we like it or not. So the choices are up to us about how we behave within the context of a world that doesn't exist without computing. So thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for the program.
Thank you, Dan.